Well, welcome back to our monthly ImmyBot community call, first Wednesday of every month from 12 to 1 Central. We go through something ImmyBot related or adjacent. And then after that, we have time to meet one-on-one with support, our devs, sometimes our owners are on there, our consultants that help us continue to push the product forward and are really technical and knowledgeable about not only how to use the product and what the product can do, but how to leverage it within your MSP. So really good resource for anybody that's been here a while, is new, wants to learn more, has a lot of questions. I ask a lot of really dumb questions, so feel free to come on in and ask what questions might feel obvious to you. There's no agenda for that meeting. It is strictly based on the questions that the audience has. So often people will sit and hang out and wait to see what might be asked to learn from, which is great. But it's just open office hours. So without you guys without you guys pushing the agenda, there isn't a lot going on in that meeting. So just come with that expectation set, and that will be good. So for today, we hopefully have a good portion of you who are joining off of the announcements about ImmyBot 101, which is our summer series going through the left-hand navigation, starting with the basics. Whether you have been using ImmyBot since the Immy Forever days or you are new to Immy, this is going to be helpful to get everybody on the same playing field of how to leverage and utilize, get the full power of Immy, kind of help differentiate the difference between standard and starter, and how Immy can not only help us onboard new computers, but it can actually help us maintain the desired states that are written or unwritten in our SOPs. So Dimitri's on today to talk about that, and that will be a great session number one. We will be putting out a recorded version of that segment as well as the transcripts on our community.immy.bot community call forum, which I have the link to at the end. If you're thinking right now, shit, I wish this tech was on, which I'm sure at least 3 of you are thinking that right now, there is an opportunity, if you can't pull them in now, to get access to that later. I changed out our pictures. I don't know if Tara's seen this, but I felt like they were a little too that wasn't quite what was giving the community team. So we kind of updated the pictures here, but my name's Anna. I'm the community engagement manager, and I get to work for and alongside the amazing Tara Rummer, who is the queen of sparkles herself. And she's going to take us through where is Amy going to be? Where are we at?
So where are we going to be? We're going to be a little everywhere. We are going to be in Nashville. We will not have a booth if you are at ChannelCon. Just look for me in a sequin hat. I am speaking. I am moderating a panel on neurodiversity in tech. So that is going to be super fun. We are also going to be at Build It Live in Jersey. I have never been. I have not been to New York City since I was little. So this is going to be interesting. If you guys are going to be there, we're really excited. We've never done this event before, so hopefully it's awesome. And it's not in Orlando this year, so yay! We're going somewhere different. And then August 6th, we have our community call. So that is going to be session 2 of ImmyBot 101. And if anyone in here is in Australia, we just added, I know it's not on this list, but we just added IT Nation Connect Australia. So you will get to see me and the lovely Anna headed over there after terrifying 23-hour flights. It's fine. Everything's fine. I'm not going to cry. I'm probably going to drug myself. That's a wrap. So
We're going to be so brave. I'm glad you brought that up because I realized I forgot to add that to the slide. We'll be there. And hopefully with us getting our recordings for the community call series this summer up, more of our Australia and Europe demographic will get to see our community calls, which will be great. But we are excited. We have a more than you would think amount of partners over in Australia for us, having never done any sort of marketing to them.
Over 10% of our user base we found out are in Australia based on the regions they select for Azure. So that's kind of cool.
And so you should probably go see them because that's a good chunk of our business. So we'll be there, and we probably won't be responding to you guys because we'll be on a completely different time zone. So
Sorry.
Sorry,
I'll
we'll put somebody in our out of office. Okay, so we got through where Emmy is going to be, and we kind of talked about ImmyBot 101 and what that will look like today. But before that, last month we talked about our new hires of Scott and Mark, and I wanted to give Mark Gomez, our new service manager at ImmyBot, an opportunity to. He's I don't even know if a full month in. I think officially at least a full month in at this point, but I wanted to give him an opportunity to kind of present what he's seen, what he wants to change, what you can expect to change or stay the same with service delivery. Remind us of the best ways to get in contact with the support team at ImmyBot and what's helpful, and so we can better partner with you as well. So I will pass it off to Mark.
Thank you, Anna. Yeah, so my name is Mark Gomez. I'm the service manager here at ImmyBot, just coming off of about 9 years in the MSP space overall. Um, I manage the central services team at the MSP that I spent the longest time at. And ImmyBot was an incredible game changer for us. I'm really excited to be a part of the team. I spent the last month working with the team and kind of looking at what exactly is uh, how everything's working and what the processes are, what we can do to kind of streamline a lot of the issues that streamline solutions to some of the issues that we're seeing. Um, One of the biggest things that even at my last MSP, and I'm still seeing it now, was a documentation on the product itself. If you're in the platform, you do see some basic documentation on some of the pages, and then you've got, of course, the docs website. But we are revamping that documents website, making everything more verbose, really taking into consideration that maybe you don't know everything about ImmyBot or really anything about ImmyBot, and getting you guys the ability to go through and be able to troubleshoot basic deployment issues, creating your own software. If you've got a central services team or an RMM team, creating integrations, things like that. Really just making it so that if you don't want to or don't really need to have the need to interface with support. If you do want to, of course, that option is always there. You can reach support ideally through a ticket, so you can email support@emmy.bot. That'll open up a ticket for us in HubSpot. You can also go through your chat and the integration in your ImmyBot instance. Definitely, if it's a session issue, please provide session numbers or a session link. There should be a checkbox to do that. That just really streamlines the support request. But yeah, that's basically it. We're working on that's step number one. Step number two after that is kind of analyzing after the tickets get cleaned up and our documents are out there, whether or not we need to get more people into the support team, or if we can continue handling things with the team that we have now. We are working through some automations with workflows in HubSpot to get you guys information. One of the concerns that we had, or that was presented to me when I first started, was that you guys don't know what your ticket numbers are or whether or not the support that we actually got the email. So we've got automatic replies going out when your ticket gets assigned. You'll have the ticket number as well as the tech who's assigned to it. And tickets are automatically being assigned about an hour after the ticket is submitted, just to again to streamline that. That way you know who's going to be working on it. You have direct access to that ticket, and then we're also working with the team to figure out whether or not that there are any blockers for them going through tickets, and it is especially with internal processes to get those resolved again in a timely manner. It's just to get those solutions out there. Sorry, I'm not very good at public speaking, y'all. I'm more of a behind the scenes guy.
Great.
Thanks. So yeah, that's basically it. Right now the documentation website's in QA. We're going through, dotting our I's, crossing our T's, making sure that the information is correct. but B, again, it's as verbose as we can make it. And I think that coupled with these ImmyBot 101 classes, it'll be a good start to the refresh.
Great. Thanks, Mark. Any questions for Mark? We're really excited to have him on board and have a full-time person that is managing what good looks like on that team and making sure that we give you guys the level of support that we want and desire from the vendors that we speak in and work with as well. Coming from our MSP backgrounds, we get the struggle. So we're taking that MSP service desk amazingness and using it on the vendor side, which I think will really, really help us and continue to scale up and provide great service.
And that was really a requirement when we hired Mark, right? We had a lot of discussions internally, and some of us really pushed for somebody who ran a service desk at an MSP to someone that understood really where y'all are, and knew how to run one,
Yeah.
so they could relate.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and like I said, I've seen a lot of the issues with the current processes. So really applying that MSP mindset, I think will get us going in the right direction.
Great. Okay, now I am gonna pass. There's a trend on the internet that's like I'm gonna pass the phone to somebody to da 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 da. But I'm gonna pass the phone to the man that I ask all of my questions to. Always takes time to explain everything to me, sometimes and oftentimes more than once. The man, the myth, the legend, Dimitri. Did you like that?
That's
Rotis.
awesome. Couldn't have asked for a better intro. Thanks, Anna. So for those some of you know me, I see some familiar names here but for those of you that don't, I'm an early adopter and contributor to ImmyBot, and I own an MSP with a partner out in Las Vegas. And one of the things that I do also for ImmyBot is I help with onboarding and demo calls, and I also take and help folks with consulting things that are over and above what ImmyBot support would do, kind of in the professional services realm with respect to ImmyBot. And so one of the things that I was asked to talk about today was kind of the getting started series, as Anna said, of where should you start with ImmyBot, and even folks that have used ImmyBot for a while. Things have changed since you adopted them, especially if you're an early adopter like myself, that you don't, where you should be today with ImmyBot may not be where you are, despite the fact that you're a long-term user, or that you're perhaps just a starter user, and haven't entertained the idea of moving to standard in order to really fully take advantage of what Immy has to offer. So with that, one of the things that I always recommend people do when they are starting with Immy, and even if you're not starting with Immy, go back and look and see that you have all of your integrations set up. These are important for a number of reasons, not the least of which it makes it much simpler if you have things like a PSA to mass create your tenancies in ImmyBot. So, if just coming in here, if I click this accept button, boom, I will have an additional 161 tenants immediately created for me and linked to my PSA in ImmyBot. Anything that then matches in other integrations, if you have unmatched clients, I'm kind of looking for one that maybe I don't. There we go. If your naming convention is the same across your PSA and ImmyBot when you created those tenants in those other tools, it is also very easy to mass match and accept the matches in ImmyBot with the integrations. Now, integrations are important in ImmyBot because they give you access to additional sources of truth that make your deployments work truly the way that you need them to work. And that's why I tell folks to do that. Alongside integrations, there's also a separate section here for Azure. And the thing to understand about Azure is really, I think of this as an integration as well. It's just a very, very special one that needs its own section. So most of these things do not take a tremendous amount of time to set up. It's a matter of getting API keys, following directions for the integrations that are typically documented there off to the right, plugging those things into the integration. And once you do that in your integration, you should typically see immediately after that they are healthy and that ImmyBot is able to communicate with those other platforms and those other tools. So once you've got your integration set up, the heart and soul of Emmy, as I always tell folks, is setting up deployments, the deployments themselves, which represent, yeah, there's a couple of PII, you know, redactions that don't work in every little spot there. I see that going on in the chat. This was something that was actually invented at my request, since I often demo stuff in my instance. But yes, everybody has it. It's the PII redaction, if you ever want to use it, is a user preference. I can show you exactly where real quick, but I see some.
I didn't know it was available for everybody now.
Yeah, I believe so. It's just whether or not, people would ever need it. But yeah, your user preference PII mask mode, you toggle it on, and it will save that preference for your user no matter where you log in to ImmyBot, and then you can toggle it off when you want it toggled off. Couple little tweaks I feel like ought to be made to it. There's a couple of missing spots, but very helpful for demos like this. Anyway, when it comes to deployments, every deployment that you define in ImmyBot is effectively defining a desired state for a given item. What do we mean by an item? Well, deployments can consist of either software or a task. And the difference between the two is, well, software you install or you uninstall. A task is something that is simply a configuration of something. BitLocker is the most familiar thing that I tell folks. BitLocker is obviously, it's a component of the OS. It's not something that you install or uninstall. It is simply something that you configure. Okay, you want it on, you want it off. How do you want it? That is what a task does. And whenever you define a deployment, you are choosing a desired state for that item. So in the case of software, you are saying that you want the software to be installed, perhaps just updated if it's on the machine, uninstalled, ignored, etc. For the case of tasks, obviously you don't have that, but you do have different modes: enforcement, auditing, monitoring, ignore, which ignore is typically meant as an override to something if you don't want it touched at a particular tenant or on a particular computer, etc. So with all of those things said, what happens with integrations is they help you set up better deployments. And if you're an early adopter, some of these things didn't exist back then, right? Or if you're starter, there are some folks that think, well, I can't make use of that, or I shouldn't make use of that because I'm not using standard version and I'm not running these things on machines, continuously, which is what standard does. Trust me, you want to go back and do these things. It doesn't matter whether you're starter or standard. Okay. So to give you, some examples here of things that are quite simple, most MSPs, when they're setting up a new computer for somebody, they are wanting to install Google Chrome on people's workstations. So very simply, how we handle that is I've got a cross-tenant deployment, and sorry, this is masked. Cross-tenant itself isn't PII. It's just the way the code is coming up here. But I encouraging you to look in the group by tenant view. Kind of demonstrates that there's a bit of a hierarchy here. So needing to install Google Chrome for all my clients' computers is simply as simple as creating a deployment at the cross-tenant level that says We're going to install Google Chrome. It's going to be the latest version. And if we so choose, we are going to configure it this very particular way. Okay. And cross-tenant, doesn't matter who the tenant is. We're going to do this for everybody. Okay. Now, quite simple. No source of truth. It's just, if it's one of our computers and we're setting it up, they get Chrome. But there are folks out there that have things like Microsoft Project. Well, what do you do when you need to install Microsoft Project? Well, you could go figure out who all those people are and create individual deployments for them in ImmyBot. Or you could create one cross-tenant deployment that relies on a source of truth in order to drive ImmyBot to install it. So we never forget to install Microsoft Project for a client, because what we're doing on a cross-tenant level is we're saying, look, Project 365 should be installed. It should be the latest version. But on a cross-tenant basis, we don't care who the tenant is. What we care about is whether the primary user of the machine has a license assigned to them in 365. That is one of the sources of truth that become available to you by setting up the integrations, in this case, the Azure integration and linkage with the tenant. So ImmyBot understands when a computer is a part of a tenant, that this tenant is related to this Azure tenant, and there's a user that uses that machine that is a part of that tenant, and there are license assignments. So by setting up these integrations, you're allowing ImmyBot to connect the dots for you that you are asking your technicians to remember and connect every single time they set up a new machine. Or when somebody moves from one machine to another, and then they don't, the end user or the customer doesn't even tell you they moved from one computer to another. By creating this deployment in this way, anchored in this source of truth, we never have to think about it ever again. And that is the hallmark of a good deployment, right? To go a step further, if you have contracts with your clients, which if you're an MSP, you probably do, there are going to be instances where you have promised to install something. Let's just pick SentinelOne. Contractually, you're supposed to be installing SentinelOne or Bitdefender or something for your clients that are under contract with you. Well, guess what? I can say, I don't care who it is. I don't care what tenant it is, what company it is. What I care is whether or not they have a contract with me in my PSA. And by virtue of the fact that I've created this deployment, now I don't have to worry about whether or not somebody is supposed to or not supposed to get SentinelOne. And none of my guys have to think about that, because what we did here and what ImmyBot does for you is it's leveraging the sources of truth that you have in your own SOPs, okay? Some of which are written, some of which are not, in order to drive these things. And now no one has to think about it again. Whether you're setting up a new computer or whether you're maintaining a computer and running maintenance on it, this deployment is going to do the right thing for me every time. Now, some may ask the question, well, what if there are additional cases that I need to install SentinelOne? Like, oh, does that mean you're billing them for it in your PSA? Well, great. If you have recurring, billing for that in ConnectWise or Halo or any of the other supported PSAs, I don't do it this way. So my drop-down list is empty. But if I wanted to individually resell SentinelOne or some of these tools to my clients on a one-off basis, maybe it's some kind of co-managed situation, well, I can also create a cross-tenant deployment that says, and if I'm billing them for it, then they get it installed as well. You don't have to settle for one deployment to accomplish what you intend to accomplish. You can say Sentinel-1 should be deployed for contracts, and it should be deployed if I'm billing them for it. 2 deployments that then comprise your SOP with respect to the deployment of that one product. Okay.
Dimitri, real quick, there's a question from Timothy in the chat. IMMY is not detecting that a user signed into a new computer, right? Project being installed would be more based on a schedule that you have set up.
Yeah, that's right. It's not going to do an immediate detection because ImmyBot doesn't do anything to a computer until it is told to do it. So effectively, what that means is you're setting up a new computer and you're intentionally running the onboarding process. That's an intentional, let's affect all of these things that are in deployments onto this computer. But in my MSP, we run regular scheduled maintenance on machines. So if someone moves from one computer to another, then ImmyBot will use the user affinity task to determine, oh, this computer has a new user, and update that user. And then because that deployment exists that connects those dots, like I talked about, project with no intervention from us, if the user doesn't call us sooner, will have project installed on that machine without our intervention. Okay. So, one of the things I tell folks is that you need to focus very heavily and primarily on your cross-tenant deployments, because all of those things really represent your SOPs and your defaults as an MSP. And you have more of them than you think you do. I have about, out of the 1,151, I just looked this morning with Anna, I have almost 300 cross-tenant deployments. And the thing that folks don't think about when it comes to cross-tenant deployments, it's like, that doesn't mean that I'm installing 300 things. It's also about what doesn't belong on machines. So I do not use a Terra. So I have a cross-tenant deployment that says if I have any machines managed, and I wrote a filter script to do this just to consolidate multiple deployments, but effectively any managed client I have, the Atera agent should never be on the machine. So if Atera is on the machine and I'm managing it, there's a problem. Somebody's trying to be shadow IT, or somebody has installed something to gain persistence in the environment. Either way, whose responsibility is that? Who's looking at this, right? ImmyBot removes these things. I take over clients from other MSPs that use Atera. So I said, well, these things don't belong on here. Let me create a cross-tenant deployment. Guess
And that's
what?
such a good point from Dimitri. Like a lot of it, I think when I think about ImmyBot, I think about what needs to be added to the computer, what needs to be on there for me to be hitting my SOPs with my clients. But it's also your responsibility to make sure that the computer doesn't have what it's not supposed to have also. So
Right.
thinking about those cross-tenant deployments as all the things that everybody or a majority of people would need, and all of the things that are reoccurring that come up that you want to correct or delete or remove.
Right. And one of the kind of differentiators here between using ImmyBot and something like Intune is, imagine implementing all of this on a tenant by tenant by tenant by tenant basis in some of these other tools, whether it's your RMM or Intune itself. There's a great degree of difficulty in doing so. Just not only is it difficult, but it's very tedious to do because you have to do it over and over and over again. And an ImmyBot, all that it takes is, in most cases, a single cross-tenant deployment for you to enforce that SOP across all of your clients. So I take very heavily advantage of that by creating all of these cross-tenant deployments that are anchored in the sources of truth that I need them to be anchored in, because then setting up additional clients in ImmyBot becomes much, much simpler. Many MSPs take the approach of, we are going to do things for, on a tenant by tenant, customer by customer basis, because, well, they see it as the responsible approach. Hey, this customer is chill. We're going to try it out on these guys first. And then we're going to work out what we need to do. And we're going to move on to the next client. And you can do that with Immy. There's not a problem with doing that, but you're not going to get to where you need to get to with Immy unless you focus on cross-tenant stuff first and heavily and on an ongoing basis. You're going to set things up. I know I already made all the mistakes you can make, where you're going to start to set things up on a per tenant basis. And then you're going to go, I'm doing this for every tenant. Should this be cross tenant? No, because I need to know whether or not, I need a source of truth. Even if ImmyBot doesn't have an integration, you can write your own integrations with PowerShell and ImmyBot in your instance that are specific to you. I've met MSPs on calls. They have their own homegrown PSAs. Guess what? That's fine. There's no problem with that. You can look at the source code of any of the PowerShell written integrations that are in ImmyBot and use those integrations to create your own sources of truth. Now, I doubt there's many people that have that here, but that's something that a lot of folks that are current ImmyBot users don't know. They think that the integrations have to be built by ImmyBot, and they don't. You can build your own. And so don't be afraid to go and have a look at some of that stuff, or, even reach out to the community. There are folks that have done this stuff. And that helps you drive good deployments, again, that are cross-tenant that you don't need to think about. And now your standards and your defaults end up being properly installed and enforced for all of the endpoints that you manage appropriately. And then you don't have to think about it again, unless you have a client that wants something different, right? There are folks out there that are afraid to create cross-tenant deployments because they feel like, well, if I define it that way, then what if this one or two clients don't want this stuff? Then I need a source of truth to deal with that. No, you don't. Let me give you a good example of what I refer to as defaults. I think there are most of us out there, one way or the other, we set power options for computers so they don't go to sleep for various reasons. Clients needing remote access. Obviously, we want our tools to run, or our techs to be able to get into a machine when a user goes to lunch or goes home for the day, right? So I've defined cross-tenant a set of power options, and those, to be very simple about it, the monitor goes to sleep and the console locks after 15 minutes. Okay. I've got clients that called me up and said, why is our computer going to sleep so soon? And the monitor turning off so soon. Hey, no problem. Let me create a power options deployment for your tenant that has different options. So what does ImmyBot do here? Does it do this and then this? No. In ImmyBot, the most specific deployment for an item wins. So something that is tenant specific will basically always override something that is cross-tenant.
If I'm not super technical and I'm trying to figure out how do I even know which one is the closest, how would you be able to differentiate that on the deployments page?
Yeah, good question. So the obvious thing when it comes to power options here, that I'll show you, is if it's cross-tenant and then you have something that's tenant specific, if you're viewing it in the group by tenant view, this one's going to be override this one. There's really not two ways about it. because the fact that it is tenant specific makes it more specific, and it's going to override the cross tenant one. There are then some nuances inside of that. So I'll take you into the deployment screen and show you how you can look at this and understand that you can create an even more specific deployment to then override something else. When you are looking at target scope, target type, target filter, it gets more specific as you move left to right. So see cross tenant, that's more general. Single tenant is more general than individual, but single tenant is more specific than cross tenant. Okay. So we're moving left to right. That becomes more specific. Okay. For our target types, all computers, it's the most general thing. As we go down, that is the same as moving left to right. It's just how ImmyBot is either rendering the radio buttons either left to right or top to bottom. So a tag will always override Halo PSA recurring invoice items. That will always override contract type. That will always override this. Okay. So to give you some examples of things that I've done for overrides beyond the simple version of, hey, power options here that we made cross tenant and tenant specific. We do have time clock machines at clients that they don't ever want that, that screen to turn off. So we've made machine specific deployments of those. To go a little bit further here, I've got Go to Connect is something that I deploy based on a tag on a cross-tenant basis. This is something that if you don't have a source of truth, I call tags the arbitrary source of truth. Tags are very handy in that you can create them and they can apply to computers, they can apply to users, or they can apply to entire tenants and any combination of those things. I don't have anything in my PSA that says a client has Go to Connect. It's a VoIP service. It's not something that I bill for. The only thing I do for clients is deploy the software to their machines if that's what they like. So I've gone ahead and created a tag. And when you do a deployment to a tag, it looks like that. Tags, very simple, new. You name the tag, you describe the tag, you hit create. That's it. Then you go and apply the tags to where you need them. In my case, what I did is I came and I created a Go to Connect tag on every single one of my tenants that actually used it. There are actually 3 deployments that I target towards that. And what I used to have before tags were here was 3 deployments for these guys, because there's a Go to Connect client, a browser extension, and a Teams plugin. I used to have 3 deployments for them, do the math. There's over 100 deployments here. But by targeting tags and making it cross-tenant, I've got 3 deployments to manage. Now, how do you override that? And why would you override that? True story. We had and have client that called us up and he said, "Will you guys please take Go to Connect off of my computer?" We're like, "But John, that's the phone system you guys are supposed to use. Would we take this software off of your computer?" And he says, "Look, the websites that I use, it constantly pops up and tells me I've got phone numbers. These are not phone numbers. And it gets in my way. I don't ever make calls or receive calls from my desktop. I don't sign into it there. I've got the app on my cell phone. And that's how I make and receive calls. I just don't need it on my desktop." So we created a deployment in ImmyBot that said, this individual person, not the computer, person, should not have Go to Connect installed. And the reason that we did that is because, well, in this case, John is the source of truth, right? John is who doesn't want it installed. And what's going to happen eventually? John's going to get a new computer. If we had targeted his computer, or if we had done this with our RMM, or we had just simply removed the software to placate him at the time, then 3 years later, or sometime down the road, what are we going to do? We're going to get a call from him and he's going to say, didn't I tell you guys? I didn't want this on my computer. To which we would say, I'm sorry, John, we forgot to read the last 100 tickets you sent us in the last 3 years to remember that. For us, when somebody wants that and there's a reason for it, we go and we create a deployment for it. And guess what? Who here is going to have to remember? Who here that I hire in the next day, week, month, year is going to have to know this? No one, right? Because we created a deployment anchored in the correct source of truth that ImmyBot will enforce in perpetuity until it's changed. Okay. So give more thought to how you structure your deployments. And if you're a starter user, one of the mistakes, and sometimes people feel like they had to do it this way, is that they create deployments that only work during onboarding. Now, there are some deployments that are only allowed to be done during onboarding, but by and large, I mean, I think I can count them on one hand. Okay. You shouldn't be creating deployments that are onboarding only unless you truly only want them to ever happen one time when you're setting up the computer new. Otherwise, it should be just a normal required enforcement. Because if you ever run maintenance on a machine, the same set of deployments that you've defined here to set up your new computers is the exact same set of rules that you can use in order to maintain the machines. And that is what we did several years ago by getting rid of our RMM entirely, because this same set of rules for setting up new computers is the same set of rules that we use to maintain them. And
Dimitri,
yeah.
I know some people will, when we're on the trade show floor, they'll be confused if they have a starter plan, that if they're choosing the required optional ad hoc, if they're not choosing that onboarding option, that they're going to get billed for the standard plan.
Right.
What would you kind of say to that?
Yeah. So when it comes to moving from starter to standard, one of the things I like to show folks is that you are effectively always in control of what you're paying for ImmyBot. You're not going to get anything that's ever a surprise, because ImmyBot does not bill in standard based solely on the number of agents that you have deployed or the number of computers that you have in ImmyBot, like most RMMs do. You can have 20,000 endpoints in ImmyBot and pay for 50 of them. Because whether you are on starter or standard, setting up new computers does not have an agent cost to it on either plan. When you run maintenance or try to do one thing, like a customer calls you up and says, we've got a new version of QuickBooks that we need to install on 10 computers. And that would be what I would call an ad hoc deployment. Yes, you would create deployments in ImmyBot to make sure that those things get installed in the future. But in ImmyBot, you can click the button to say, do it now, and it actually will. That would be something that would require a license after 7 days of the machine being in ImmyBot. So you can have 20,000 endpoints and only pay for a bucket of 50 agents. And the agent licenses get assigned to the machine when you run maintenance or an ad hoc session after the 7-day initial period. And that comes out of this bucket and assigned to the machine. You know a machine has gotten a license assigned to it for that month because you will see a little badge on it right here. And at the end of the billing cycle, all of those badges go back into the bucket and reassigned as you use them. If you hit the deploy all button on 1,000 machines and you only have 50 licenses, it's not going to exceed the 50 licenses. ImmyBot's going to go, hey, sorry, you don't have the number of licenses required in order to do this. It'll do it on these machines and stop. So there are a lot of folks that are afraid to move from this to that because they think, well, now I've got to pay for all the agents in here. No, you don't. You're paying for what you use incrementally in an agent bucket, as I like to call it. Right.
Yeah.
So even if you have a mix, like I still have break fix consulting clients that they'll come to me and their folks will come to me and say, we just bought 100 computers because of the whole Windows 11 thing, but we don't have the throughput to install all these things. Will you help us? Yes. I don't need licenses for those computers for ImmyBot, but whether it's starter or standard, because I can bring them in as new computers, install them, set them all up, and build a client.
Yeah.
Right. Does that help, Anna?
Yeah. Neil asked, what if I want to remove the agent from the portal for an offboarded device? That way I can run one action and know I'm not going to be billed for it next month and not rely on the vendor to take care of this for me.
Are we talking about ImmyBot itself, or are we talking about other vendors? So
Neil, do you have any thoughts on that? DNS filters. Oh, side combo. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. But I know that there is an initiative actually for an offboarding feature in ImmyBot, where such that if you have a computer that has died or that you are decommissioning, that the computer, you can run stuff against that machine account to fully decommission it by going into the tools. Of course, the integrations would be required to go in and delete the Bitdefender license or the SentinelOne license or the ThreatLocker license if you know that machine is decommissioned or it's gone and never coming back. We actually just had a client that got flooded this morning. It sounds like they've got about 30 computers affected. So we be handy to be able to decommission those, a little bit more easily. But that's something that my understanding is that it's coming one day, but probably not ahead of some other features that I know are being heavily worked on and important right now.
Yeah. Great.
So there any questions out there that, folks have that, if you'd rather talk than type? I'm game to take some questions to the extent Anna says I'm allowed to take them.
Yeah. Any questions regarding this conversation? Great task now. Great questions as you sit and muddle with it for the next 10 minutes. If things come up or as you're thinking about it and digesting it, you can ask those questions during the office hours as well. But I will give an awkward 11 seconds to see if anybody has any questions. Otherwise, if Brandon is still on, I'll have him show what he's working on, and then this is the last formal thing for this. So Brandon, if he's still on, will show what he's been working on, and then right after that, I will roll right into office hours. So if you have something at the top of the hour, feel free to jump at the 1 o'clock Central. If not, you can stay on and ask your questions. But Brandon, are you still on?
Awesome. Yes, I am still here.
Perfect.
Oh, I can't share my screen. Only media organizers, presenters can share. I just noticed.
Hang on. Let
Okay.
me see if I can give you some instructions. Permissions, rather. Brandon.
I just made him a presenter.
Perfect.
Oh,
Thank
there
you.
we go.
Make a signer. Like an ASL signer. Have you guys ever seen that in Teams? There's an option to make somebody a signer.
Interesting. I don't know ASL, so I can't do that. But here's some ImmyBot. So the challenge we had, we are moving a law firm from a premise-based server to Azure Files. Works great for them. They have a ton of unstructured data. It's not a good fit for SharePoint. And so far they're enjoying it. But the challenge was, how do we get all of these shares remapped consistently? We had a Intune script for a little bit of time, just doing the normal mappings, but I'm like, I want to make this a little bit more defendable, and also I want to run it through ImmyBot. So what we have here is the whole script. I'll start off with this get group memberships here because I want the memberships of the groups to drive the assignment of certain shares as well. And I wrote a custom ImmyBot module, a meta script for get Azure AD member of. This one here, it's very similar to some of the other actions. I don't know if I can zoom in on this. There we go. That's probably better for y'all. So we have our input parameters. So we're looking for an email address, which is trying to do some basic regex for make sure it's actually email, and then include or exclude external users. From there, we're getting the IMMY auth header for 365. We're setting the consistency level to eventuals. We're doing a lookup on there with the filter that requires that, and then we're using the database URI. So we're getting the IMMY Azure AD user details. So proxy addresses match email address, either lowercase or uppercase, indicating a primary or secondary proxy address, and then including external users just based off of the switch we have up here, which is typically going to be false. If we find a user, then we're going to go ahead and do a REST method for the base URI, user ID member of, and then get the response out of that. That's going to enumerate the groups. With that response, we're going to see if we're just going to select the object, and we're going to save that in our group memberships. There is a number of shares that are there by default, so we're going to map our client lol.file.windows.net/archive, close files, legal docs, plaintiff cases, so on and so forth. Their share letter, just building a PowerShell object there. And then we're also going to then check to say in group memberships, are they a member of management or billing or accounting? And if they are, then we're going to add those shares here. Everything is restricted to NTFS permissions. It's just I don't want to mount a share that they're not going to have access to anyway if I don't have to. So once we have the shares to map PowerShell object all set up, we're going to go ahead and then create a PS1 drive mapping file. So we're going to save that as drive map lines, which is going to be just each of the shares to map in that list. So if get PS drive letter is there, so if it's already mapped, go ahead and remove SMB mapping, remove PS drive. Sometimes remove SMB mapping doesn't work. This is the kind of hit it with a hammer option here to get rid of the old mappings. And then we're going to set new PS drive. Name is going to be the letter out of shares to map, and then path is going to be that path there. We don't actually do anything with share name once it goes into this. This is more just for if we're going through logs. We can see a more friendly name of what we're actually doing here. We're going to prepend the set execution policy bypass for just this process on there so we can run it. And then we're going to join all the drive map lines there with just a new line character. So at the end of it, you end up with basically a giant string that has a list of mapping instructions on it, generated dynamically based on the user's groups. From there, we're going to go ahead and start off a test. First off, make sure Cloud Kerberos ticket retrieval is enabled so they can actually get to the Kerberos ticket to get onto the file share. We're going to then check to see is the drive mapping script present. And then if it is, we're going to then get the contents of that, normalize it in case there's any sort of weird line feeds or character turns on there. And then check to say, does that match what we are expecting it to be on our dynamically generated script up here? We're then going to check to say, is there a scheduled task with the name drive mapping on there? And then if so, save it as task present, success false. So a few of the things we're checking on there. Once we actually go to enforce it, we're going to first check to see, is there a path to CE top? We're going to store the script there. If not, we'll just make it. We're then going to set the Cloud Kerberos ticket retrieval enabled to 1, which enables the feature. We're going to take the drive map script and just output it to drive mapping.ps1. And then we're going to make a scheduled task to run this. Reason being is I want this to run under the user's context whenever they sign into the computer. We wanted to use their Kerberos ticket. The system account's not going to have one. So what I'm doing is I'm setting the task name, drive mapping, old task name, just in case they still had the old one for Intune drive mapping to remove that. If it's there, we're just going to unregister it and then path to the script. They have a register new scheduled task. The action is run PowerShell, no profile, bypass file, script path. The task trigger is at logon. Scheduled task principal is going to be just any user, and then we'll register it on there. So for the end user, once they turn on, they'll see a little command window pop up for just a second. It goes through, maps the drives, and gets it done for them.
So pretty simple. Seems like light work.
Yeah. It's been a fun project. If anyone wants to chat about Azure files, I'm happy to connect. You can find me on all of the Discords. But
So
yeah,
with this, do you still need, or I missed this part, but do you
Yeah.
still need like a VPN connection?
yes. So we are using Cloudflare Zero Trust to establish a connection.
Cool.
So the Azure Files endpoint has a private endpoint in a VNet, so it's just a normal IP. And then we have a small Linux VM sitting up there just running the Cloudflare connector.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, there's also SMB over Quick. I think
Yeah.
it's still beta. I didn't try too much with it. I figure if we're gonna have, they're still running RD. So they needed a VPN anyway. So we're like, yeah, I'll just feed it through Cloudflare. But it works as far as we can tell. Today is our cutover day, so it's been working well so far.
Nice.
Curious as to why GPO or Azure Policy wasn't used.
We have not all of the devices are Intune and not all of them are group policy. This is a client we're rolling up to a current standard, so we haven't had a chance to reset all of their old devices or joint domain. So I figure it was going to be easier just to use ImmyBot as a source of truth on there. It also has the benefit of giving that kind of immediate feedback. So we have, one consistent source for deployment for all of the endpoints, regardless of what state they're in. And then also if we need to do any sort of debugging or troubleshooting, we're able to get the output right there. Intune is great, but if you ever try to run a script or a policy through Intune and it doesn't work, it is not
Gotta
fun
wait
to
5
do it.
ever to see any results.
You need to wait 6 Microsoft hours, which is about 1 to 2 business days, and then the
Yeah.
result you get is basically it broke.
Awesome. Thanks.
Drew, you're gonna make me post my my website. Hang on. This is my favorite domain that I've bought, I think, besides kelvintology.church. But cool. If there's other questions, I'll hand it back to the open hours.
Perfect. Okay, so that will conclude our community call today. If you want to continue the side conversations happening in the chat, you have specific support questions with open tickets, or have any questions that pretty much we have a large portion of the ImmyBot team on here. So throw your questions at us if you have them. Otherwise, thank you guys for joining. We will see you next month. It is, let me get my slide up, but we are August 6th for next month. Here is helpful resources if you need it. The ImmyBot community forum, call forum. I put all of this at the end of my email that I send with the notes at the end of the day. So this community call forum is where we will be hosting these notes as well as the recording, at least the hyperlink. We might put it up on YouTube, but the hyperlink will be posted there. So that'll come out if you have anybody that you want to send this call to. Otherwise, this is a really bad AI summer robot to bring us into our summer office hours.